Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming to this press conference. This is a momentous occasion. It's a crucial turning point that we all have been working toward for so long, and it's a cause for celebration that no rain can dampen. In fact, if you will recall, when the Denny party landed in 1851, it was raining. Everything that's great in Seattle happens when it's raining, right? Now, my name is Clay Eals. I'm the Executive Director of the Southwest Seattle Historical Society, and here's how this press conference will proceed. First, I will have some introductory remarks just to lay the groundwork for this collaborative announcement. And then, one by one, I will introduce to you the key players in this quest, the ones representing the individuals and organizations who've been so crucial to this project, and each of them will say a few words. And then I will open the press conference up for questions which you can address to any of the speakers. So today, we are here with truly exciting news for the West Seattle community and for Seattle and Puget Sound as a whole. The 1904 log building, whose sign you can barely see over the roof, and just a half block down the street, this building, which was first known as Fir Lodge, and for the past 65 years as the Alki Homestead restaurant, and which has been closed for more than 6 years since a fire damaged a portion of the building's interior, now has a new owner and is on track to be restored. This development comes as welcome news for anyone with a heart for history, and for the countless thousands who are inspired by the early days of this peninsula and this city, and who have passionate and indelible memories of enjoying family-style chicken dinners and wedding receptions and graduation parties and business functions and many other unique gatherings at this iconic treasure, where everyone could find, as the slogan goes, a bit of old Seattle. Over the past 6 years, all of the parties represented here today have worked tirelessly and mostly behind the scenes to bring us to this very juncture today. The new owner is DENN SCHILLING, whose purchase of the Alki Homestead from Tom Lin closed just yesterday. Dennis is a resident of Mercer Island who is known here in West Seattle for restoring the Shoremont apartment building 3 years ago, just a few blocks from here on Alki Avenue. Now, a crucial factor in Dennis's decision to close the transaction is an agreement that he reached with our organization, the Southwest Seattle Historical Society, to modify an easement that the Historical Society holds for the Alki Homestead parking lot. The Historical Society Board has agreed that Dennis can use a portion of the parking lot to build an apartment building of up to 6 units to help him finance the Alki Homestead restoration. This agreement leaves the Historical Society with a scaled down but sufficient number of parking spaces for use by staff, volunteers, and visitors to our Birthplace of Seattle Log House Museum, right here where we're standing today and just a half block from the homestead. Most important, this agreement keeps all of our eyes on the prize, which is the restoration of the Alki Homestead building. Under this agreement, construction of the apartment building is contingent on Dennis restoring the homestead and being guided every step of the way by the Seattle Landmarks Preservation Board and staff. Our Historical Society and our Birthplace of Seattle Log House Museum are tied inseparably to Fir Lodge, Alki Homestead. You might say that Fir Lodge and Alki Homestead is our mothership, because when the two buildings were constructed in 1904, our museum building served as the carriage house for Fir Lodge. When we converted this carriage house to a museum in the mid-1990s, we secured city landmark status for both buildings, and restoration of the Alki Homestead has been and will remain our #1 preservation priority until its doors open again. So our theme this morning is gratitude. And in our book, everyone involved is a hero. So let's get to the speakers. I'm going to introduce each one. They'll come up and speak for a couple of minutes, and then we'll have the questions. First will be Marcy Johnsen, president of our Historical Society Board, whose members have worked so hard to bring us to this juncture. Marcy?
Thank you, and it's very good to see all of you here today. I can't tell you how excited I am to start today and forward. Thankful both to Tom Lin and to Dennis Schilling for working out this agreement and coming to fruition so that we can preserve our beloved Alki Homestead Fir Lodge. I'm not going to say anymore because there's lots of other speakers, but just look forward to all of you traveling with us through this journey. Thanks for being here.
Next, we are grateful for the new owner, Dennis Schilling, who has boldly stepped forward to invest in the history and the soul of West Seattle. Dennis.
So far, I'm the one who's done the least in this, so the people I really think have done the most. And actually, Tom has really helped out. He's made sure that... sorry. Tom has done a lot because I wouldn't have been able to buy it without him. He's helped me with some financing, and he's definitely kept coming back to the table. And the other one is the Southwest Historical Society has been crucial in giving up some of the parking so that I can afford to pay for the remodel. They've remodeled this building. They know how expensive and difficult it is. If I wanted to build an apartment, I could have built it somewhere else. It's been a lot easier. That's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this to try to restore the building. But I think it's pretty exceptional that they often ask other people to do something to restore property, and they recognize that they had to step up to do this, and they did it. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Dennis. Yes, applause is very much appropriate here. And now we are grateful to the seller, Tom Lin, who has consistently had the vision to, as he has put it repeatedly, bring the homestead back. I can't tell you how many times I've heard Tom say that, and who has made it possible for Dennis to purchase the building. Tom.
We had many buyers along the way, and
Close to the mic.
okay, we had many buyers along the way, and I had turned down many buyers because I didn't think they were an appropriate buyer. When I first met Dennis, I knew that he restored Showmont, so he has a track record of restoring old buildings. Immediately, I knew he was the right person, and I had to work closely with him. And with the help of course, the Historic Society, and then Erin Doherty of the Department of Neighborhood. When I first met her, I thought, okay, another government official, red tape, blah, 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 right? I can't work with her. But she did her job, she did it well. She worked extra hard to make this happen. So I think that she was the person who actually made this all possible. She guided Dennis and I along the way, and because it's really hard to go through the maze of trying to restore a building. So I want to thank her especially, and for Dennis to have the parking lot of the apartments made it possible for this project to proceed forward. And I can't tell you how happy I am that it took us 6 years to find the right buyer, and I hope he gives him all the support that he needs to make this happen.
Thank you, Tom. So next we are grateful to what we call the Homestead Coalition, the 3 regional heritage organizations whose advice and hands-on assistance have been and will continue to be invaluable. So first, from the Washington Trust for Historic Preservation, Executive Director Chris Moore. Chris?
Thank you, Clay, and thank you certainly to Dennis and Tom. It's a pleasure to be able to be here. I'm the executive director with the Washington Trust for Historic Preservation, and we're absolutely thrilled that we're at this moment and able to celebrate the fact that we can move forward and look at, envision and look at the future of the Homestead restaurant once again. In 2009, the Washington Trust included the Homestead restaurant in our most endangered historic properties list. This list is a way for us to raise awareness, work with all stakeholders, and try and find a positive preservation outcome for properties and resources on that list. And here we are 6 years later. As we all know, preservation does not happen overnight, and so it has been a long journey. But when we preserve buildings, the reason we preserve them, yes, we love the architecture, but ultimately we love what they represent. We love the stories that are infused within those resources, and those stories are created by the people. And so what is wonderful about this event is all of us here, and all of you as well, are now part of that story and part of the history of the Homestead restaurant, and we're very excited to continue to shepherd it down into the future. Thank you very much.
Okay, next from Historic Seattle, we would love to have had Eugenia Wu and Rick Seaver here. They've been hands-on, but we are fortunate today to have the council chair for Historic Seattle, Michael Herschensohn. Michael?
Thank you very much. I'm always the chair of last resort, so I'm very happy to be here. This place matters. I think you can see the poster right there, the wonderful day when people came out to West Seattle to let everybody know how important this building is and how critical it is to the historic fabric of Seattle. So we're delighted that this day is here. Every meeting we ask, how's it going in West Seattle? And now we can say it's going well.
Next, from the third organization in our coalition, is from For Culture, the preservation lead and West Seattle resident and former board member of our historical society, Flo Lentz. Flo?
Good morning, and thank you to everyone for being here. This is a great day. It's been a long time coming. We are super grateful to Tom Lin and Dennis Schilling for making this happen. I just want to remind the new owner that For Culture is a funding organization. It's our job to provide support for arts, heritage, and preservation, including, in some cases, to private property owners that are restoring historic properties. And so we encourage Mr. Schilling to check us out. We provide small but meaningful grants, and that's one of the advantages of being a landmark, that you are eligible for this particular financial benefit. Thanks very much.
And that's something, Flo, that we will certainly be working with Dennis on, helping him see these kinds of opportunities that are available. Next, we are grateful for the West Seattle business community, which has been with us in so many ways. And today, with words of good tiding, representing the West Seattle Chamber of Commerce is CEO Lynn Dennis. Lynn.
Clay, it's my privilege to be here representing the West Seattle Chamber of Commerce. Up here on the porch this morning, there was a huge buzz, everybody talking about all of the memories that they've had. Mr. Schilling, thank you for giving us the opportunity to have some new memories. We're looking forward to it, and being the leading advocate of the West Seattle business community, remember, we're here for you.
And finally, we are deeply grateful to the City of Seattle and its Landmarks Preservation Board. There is no question that we would not be celebrating here today without the strong landmarks program of the city and with the leadership of the elected officials who make it possible. Representing the city today is one of our biggest heroes, three-term Seattle City Council member and West Seattle resident Tom Rasmussen. Tom?
Well, is this a dream? Because all of us have been hoping for this day, and I think at times we weren't sure that we would see this day when we really had great hope that the homestead would be restored after its terrible fire 6 years ago. It is a historic day for a historic building in Seattle's oldest neighborhood. That building is 100 years old. It's going into its second century. And we all of us have worked in the capacities that we have to help ensure that the building is restored and it becomes a wonderful gathering place again for not just the Alki neighborhood, but for all of Seattle. It's a very high bar to become a landmark. To be designated a landmark, a majority of the landmark board, not just the majority of the people at the meeting, have to approve landmarking the structure, the building. And this was some time ago. And what I hope is that the owners of a landmark will realize that we're all behind you. We're pulling for you. We want you to succeed if it is challenging to maintain or to restore a building. And you've heard today, Mr. Schilling, all of us say that we're there for you. And I know a few people in City Hall who can be helpful. And if you should hit a few bumps along the way, call me at any time, and I'll be there to help you. Again, Clay spoke appropriately of appreciation for our Department of Neighborhoods and the staff that have helped in this effort. And I also have staff who have been working on this. Brian Hawksford was assigned to this during the time that he worked for me, and now Evan Clifthorne. I always have a staff member assigned specifically to this project. It is one of my highest priorities as a member of the City Council to see that this landmark is restored. So I have a few more months left to ensure that that happens, and you can call on me anytime, Mr. Schilling. And again, I want to express appreciation to everyone who's worked for this to see this historic day happen, and then I look forward to the dedication when the project is completed. Thank you very much.
Okay, one final word before questions. Michael Herschensohn referred to it. I'm going to take you back 5 years. Many of you have seen this photo. This is the Alki Homestead when it was Fir Lodge about 100 years ago. And this is the only photo that we have that shows the Alki Homestead, then Fir Lodge, and our museum building in the same photo. This really shows the close relationship that we have. And then who's got a This Place Matters poster? I've brought several of them out here, but I want to hold that up as well, because thank you, Lissa Kramer, our new interim museum manager. 5 years ago, many of you were here, and you remember we gathered 200 people in front of the homestead to do just what we've been talking about today, which is to promote heritage. And this was on July 4th of 2010. And in the months ahead, as the restoration begins, we plan to put on other homestead-related events. Anybody like the idea of a virtual chicken dinner? But these events will include another advocacy rally exactly 5 years later, July 4th of 2015. And as you can see, the headline here is This Place Matters. The rally at that time will add a word, and it will say This Place Still Matters. Okay, and we hope to see you all there on July 4th. And now I'd like to open it up for questions, and let's do this one at a time so that each speaker can come up, whoever you want. So please ask your question, but let me know who you want to ask it of.
I have a question back here for Mr. Schilling. Okay. It's the only question that the readers are asking so far, which is, so will there be a time when the chicken dinners are back at the homestead? So
the question is, will there be a time when the chicken dinners are back at the homestead?
I hope so. I don't know exactly what is going to be, the commercial use on the first floor. I'm guessing it will be a restaurant. I don't own or operate restaurants, so that's not my area of expertise. So my plan would be to get it rehabilitated and then lease it out to somebody that would want to use that space, hopefully for a restaurant. But I don't know anything about restaurants. You don't want me running a restaurant.
Next question.
Either Mr. Schilling or Mr. Lin, in the past week or so, there's been a forklift and a couple of dumpsters over in the parking lot. Is that in any way related to the sale?
The question is the equipment in the homestead parking lot related to the sale of the homestead? Tom?
Unfortunately not. That is for Starbucks. Because they're doing restoration, and they asked me, because I didn't want the equipment lying around to block the traffic or anything like that, so they asked me if they can use the parking lot just for 2 or 3 weeks. So that should be out of the way probably in a couple of days.
Thank you.
Next question.
I'm concerned that the readers are only wondering when the chicken dinners will be coming back. How big do the apartment buildings need to be? What will it do to the quality of life of those people living around it and the last remaining open space in Alki?
Question about the impact of the possible 6-unit apartment building. Dennis?
It hasn't been designed yet. We've come up with some preliminary things and have gone through the architectural review committee already for concept. Because that parking lot is also part of the landmarks designation, so they will have input on massing, setback, scale, and what I presented already, they seem to give me positive feedback on. We're trying to make it match appropriately with the museum and not be too overtake it. I think it'll look better than a broken up asphalt parking lot myself, but that's all I can say at this point. It's too preliminary.
Is there anyone who's talking for the neighbors, or is it just the Historical Society who's making the decisions about giving away this piece of the landmark?
I can address that. The question is about have neighbors been involved beyond the Historical Society, and the notion of giving away a portion of the parking lot. We don't look at it that way. We hold an easement for the parking lot, and we all know that not just the purchase, but the restoration of the building is an enormously huge financial undertaking. And we have discussed this long and hard as a Historical Society board, because we have the responsibility in holding the easement that was granted to us back in the mid-1990s when we converted this to a museum. And we firmly believe that the eyes on the prize is the homestead building, and that if it takes using a portion of the parking lot to make that happen, we're all in favor of it. We have the reason that we have a leadership role in that is because we have the easement, and so we take that responsibility very seriously. Other questions?
I think the gentleman was also asking about outreach to the neighborhood. So what portion of outreach to the neighborhood have you done in this process?
We haven't done anything formally to get outreach into the neighborhood, but this issue, I'll wait till the truck passes. This issue of how to restore the homestead has been before us for 6 years, and anybody can put 2 and 2 together about what it's going to take to make this happen. It's a huge financial undertaking, and I can tell you that as executive director of this organization and working almost 7 days a week on behalf of heritage in this community, there is not a day that goes by that I do not hear what's going to happen to the homestead. We're really concerned about the homestead. And we believe that it is important for us to be a collaborator in the restoration of the homestead. There are a number of places on the spectrum our organization could be, and I think we've hit the sweet spot for what it needs to be, and taken our responsibility seriously.
When is the restoration starting? How long do you guys think it'll take? I mean, is there any kind of date, goals?
The question is the timetable for restoration, and that's something that Dennis can talk about.
It's a complicated process, and you have to start. First, we have to do some engineering work to make sure that the building is safe. And so we have to try to find out what the current condition of the building is after the fire, and actually there's quite a bit of delayed maintenance on the structure. So I've actually retained an engineer to start that process even before I closed on the property. Once he comes back with a report, then they're going to try to figure out what it needs to bring it up to code. Then we have to go to the city to see if that's what they would accept. But then we have the architectural review committee that says you can't change anything on the inside or the outside of the building, which makes doing structural engineering changes difficult. So we have to then, after figuring out what we need from an engineering safety standpoint, what the city will allow us to do, then we go back to the city for the review committee to say, well, these are the changes that we need to do to make it safe. They're going to tell us whether we could do those changes, and then we start the process all over again. And so your guess is as good as mine. And all I can say is I've started the process. A lot of this isn't involved with the city. So.
I might add that while it's very hard to predict the timetable on this, Dennis has a financial incentive to move forward as quickly as possible. And we are aware of that as well, and we're here to help him every step of the way. Other questions? Thank you very much for coming. Feel free to interview any of us. What a day, what a celebration, and I love that it's raining. Even though it would have, the stories at the homestead a half block away, this is somehow quite appropriate. You know, the best things in Seattle happen in the rain. Thank you very much.